15 crazy revelations about the first prehistoric men. Hello and welcome, everyone. Today's topic is a little different. We're going to talk about our ancient ancestors, the ones who roamed this earth millions of years ago. But what science has discovered recently has completely turned old historical ideas upside down. Much of what we learned in school and college has now changed. Today I'm going to share with you 15 crazy revelations about the first prehistoric men. When you hear these, you might think, really? How is that possible? First revelation, the Nutcracker's range. Let's just start with the first revelation. Have you ever heard the name Paranthropus? They're also called Nutcracker Man. Know why? Because their jaws and teeth were incredibly strong, as if made for cracking nuts. We used to think that these Paranthropus were limited to a small area in Africa because their diet was very specific. They ate only tough plants, which is why they had such teeth. But recently, what was found in Ethiopia's Afar region has surprised everyone. A lower jawbone was discovered there. At first, scientists thought, okay, this is familiar Paranthropus. But when they dated it, they were stunned. Its age was approximately 3.8 million years. This is crazy because until now, we believed that Paranthropus emerged only about 2.7 million years ago. This new fossil pushes that date back by more than 1 million years. That means these nutcrackers were walking the earth at the same time as Lucy's species, Australopithecus afarensis. They were contemporaries living side by side. This completely changes our understanding of human evolution. It wasn't a straight line, one after another. It was more like a bush, with multiple species existing at the same time. Second revelation, the Hobbit's origins. Now the second revelation. In 2003, an amazing discovery was made on Flores Island in Indonesia. Scientists found a skeleton of a strange human species, whose height was only about 1 meter. They were named Homo floresiensis, but popularly known as the Hobbit. For a long time, scientists debated where these little people came from. The most popular theory was that they were descendants of Homo erectus, the upright man who left Africa. The idea was that some Homo erectus got stranded on Flores Island, and due to island isolation and limited resources, they shrank in size over generations. This is called island dwarfism, which happens to many animals. But recently, a new study has turned this theory on its head. Scientists re-examined the teeth and skull fragments of the Hobbit and found something unexpected. The features didn't match Homo erectus at all. They looked much more primitive, more like Homo habilis, or even Australopithecus. The new theory suggests that the hobbits might be descended from a much older, more primitive human ancestor that left Africa long before Homo erectus. An ancestor we haven't even found fossil evidence for yet. This means the story of humans leaving Africa might be much older and more complicated than we ever imagined. Third revelation, the mystery of the giant teeth. Third revelation. Let's go back to the 1940s. In Java, Indonesia, a scientist named Frans Weidenreich found some very strange fossils. They were teeth, human-like teeth, but enormous in size, about 6 times larger than modern human teeth. Weidenreich believed these teeth belonged to a race of giant humans that once lived in Java. He named the species Meganthropus. For decades, the scientific community was skeptical. They thought these were just misidentified orangutan teeth or something else. But recently, modern technology has been applied to these old fossils. Scientists used a new technique called dental enamel proteomics, which analyzes protein residues in tooth enamel. The results, published in Nature Journal, confirmed that these giant teeth indeed belonged to a distinct human species, not an ape. Meganthropus was real. We still don't have a complete skeleton, so we don't know how tall they were. But if the teeth are 6 times larger, imagine the jaw, imagine the whole body. There was a time in Southeast Asia when giant humans roamed the forest alongside the hobbits. Imagine that picture. Fourth revelation. Blue eyes, dark skin. The fourth revelation is about appearance. If someone told you that 10,000 years ago a blue-eyed young man lived in England whose skin color was jet black, would you believe it? This isn't imagination, it's reality. A skeleton named Cheddar Man was found in Gough's Cave in England. He's about 10,000 years old. Scientists analyzed his DNA and were shocked. He had black skin, but his eyes were blue. This proves that Europe wasn't always populated by fair-skinned people. The adaptation to lighter skin happened much later, after the advent of agriculture. When people started farming, their diet changed and they needed more vitamin D from sunlight, so skin lightened over generations. But Cheddar Man shows us that skin color and eye color don't always go together. He was a black-skinned, blue-eyed Briton. Fifth revelation. The milk intolerance. Now, the fifth revelation is a bit personal. You might drink milk tea every day, but did you know that people 10,000 years ago would get sick if they drank milk? Yes, lactose intolerance. People like Cheddar Man, the ancient hunter-gatherers of Europe, could not digest milk as adults. The enzyme needed to break down lactose, called lactase, would stop being produced after childhood. This ability came to our bodies only a few thousand years ago, when we started domesticating animals for milk, and our bodies adapted to that change over generations through evolution. This is one of the strongest examples of recent human evolution. If you're of European descent and can drink milk comfortably, you have ancestors who were dairy farmers. Sixth revelation. The seafarers. Sixth revelation. This one is geographical. Many people don't know that our ancestors were incredibly good sailors. On the island of Sulawesi in Indonesia, some stone tools have been found that are at least 118,000 years old. Now, Sulawesi has always been surrounded by deep sea. You can't swim there. So how did they get there? Scientists believe they probably crossed the ocean on rafts made of bamboo or wood. This means humans were building watercraft and crossing oceans 118,000 years ago, long before we thought such technology existed. Our ancestors were more adventurous and advanced than we give them credit for. Seventh revelation. The Neanderthal romance pattern, seventh revelation, goes deep into DNA level, about the relationship between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. We know we have some Neanderthal genes in us, but a recent study published in Nature Journal revealed a mathematical pattern behind this mixing. Scientists calculated that when our ancestral mothers mated with Neanderthal males, the Neanderthal X chromosome barely entered our gene pool. But conversely, when Neanderthal females mated with Homo sapiens males, the Homo sapiens X chromosome entered their gene pool in large quantities. What does this mean? It means that in prehistoric times, the pattern of interbreeding was mainly Neanderthal male plus Homo sapiens female. Why this imbalance existed, scientists are still puzzled about. Maybe it was cultural, maybe it was biological. But the genetic evidence is clear. Eighth revelation. The mass burial. Eighth revelation is a bit human. We know ancient people lived in caves. But what did their funerals look like? Near Cheddar Man's cave, there's another cave called Aveline's Hole. There, about 50 people were buried together within a span of only 100 to 200 years. But interestingly, Cheddar Man was found alone, lying on the cave floor. This suggests that even in those ancient times, society probably had special burial rituals for special people. Maybe he was a tribal leader, so he was buried separately. This shows us that prehistoric people had complex social structures and beliefs about death. Ninth revelation: humans as prey. Ninth revelation is a bit scary. Imagine you're in an open plain, but all around you, saber-toothed tigers are roaming. What was the condition of humans then? Research in South African caves by scientist C.K. Brain showed that humans weren't just hunters, they were also prey. In many caves, bones of humans and other animals were found together, but those bones had tooth marks of leopards and lions. That means many times humans ended up in leopard stomachs, and leopards would carry humans to trees or caves to eat them. This discovery teaches us how dangerous the ancient world was for our ancestors. We weren't always at the top of the food chain. 10th revelation: the survivors. 10th revelation: about climate change and human survival. Excavations in Kenya's Namarotukunyan region showed that the weather there changed repeatedly. Sometimes it was swampy, sometimes it turned into dry desert. Sometimes fire burned everything to ashes. Normally, in such adverse conditions, any species would not survive. But humans survived. They survived because they didn't change themselves to fit the environment. Rather, they changed the environment with their tools. During famine, they dug up new plant roots to eat, or broke animal bones to eat the marrow to stay alive. This pattern of evolution teaches us that humans progressed not through physical strength, but through intelligence. 11th revelation: the dating puzzle. 11th revelation: an old puzzle about dating. We assumed modern humans emerged only a few 100,000 years ago. But fossils found in Kenya's Hadar region in the 1970s changed that idea. Skull 1470, found by Richard Leakey's team, sparked debate about its age. Some said it was 2 million years old. Some said nearly 3 million years old. This proves how ancient human history is and how much we still have to learn. Scientists still disagree about exactly how old these fossils are. 12th revelation: the Dragon Man. 12th revelation. This one is very recent. In 1933, a skull was found in Harbin, China, but it remained hidden in a well for 80 years to protect it from the Japanese army. When scientists finally studied it in 2021, they realized it was something extraordinary. They named it Dragon Man, or Homo longi. This skull is at least 146,000 years old, but it's massive. The brain case is larger than that of modern humans. Dragon Man had a wide face, large, almost square eye sockets, and thick brow ridges. But his features are more like modern humans than Neanderthals. Some scientists believe Dragon Man might be our closest relative, even closer than Neanderthals. This suggests that a separate lineage of humans with large brains lived in East Asia for hundreds of thousands of years, possibly interacting with our ancestors. 13th revelation: the 3.8 million-year-old face. 13th revelation. In 2016, in Ethiopia, scientists found something remarkable: a nearly complete skull of an Australopithecus anamensis, dated to 3.8 million years ago. Before this, we had only fragments of this species. This skull, called MRD, gave us the first clear look at the face of our possible direct ancestor. And the face was surprising. It was primitive, with a long projecting face, but also had some modern features. This fossil shows us that human evolution 4 million years ago was already complex, with multiple species existing and possibly competing. 14th revelation. The Denisovan mystery. 14th revelation. In 2008, In a cave in Siberia, scientists found a tiny finger bone, just the tip of a pinky finger. When they analyzed the DNA, they found it belonged to a completely unknown human species. They named them Denisovans after the cave. We still have almost no fossils of Denisovans, just a few teeth and bone fragments. But we know they existed because their DNA lives on in people today. Melanesians and Aboriginal Australians have up to 5% Denisovan DNA. Some Tibetans got a gene for high-altitude survival from Denisovans. This means that while Neanderthals were in Europe and West Asia, Denisovans were roaming East Asia and possibly South Asia. They interbred with our ancestors and with Neanderthals, a whole human species, almost invisible in the fossil record, but present in our blood. 15th revelation, the hybrid child. And the final revelation, the 15th, is perhaps the most touching. In 2018, scientists analyzed a bone fragment found in Denisova Cave in Siberia. It was just a small piece, but the DNA told an incredible story. This bone belonged to a girl who lived about 90,000 years ago. Her mother was a Neanderthal. Her father was a Denisovan, a first-generation hybrid, a direct child of two different human species. Her existence proves that Neanderthals and Denisovans not only interbred occasionally, but they lived together, met each other, and formed families. This girl had a Neanderthal mother and a Denisovan father. She was loved. She was cared for. She lived and died in that cave. This discovery, more than any other, shows us that the boundaries between human species were blurry. They were different, but not so different that they couldn't fall in love and have children. We are all, in a way, descendants of such ancient love stories across species. Friends, one thing is clear from this entire discussion. We underestimate our ancestors. We think they were savage, mute, stupid. But the 3.8 million-year-old tools from Kenya, the ocean-crossing journeys to Sulawesi, the genetic exchanges with Neanderthals, everything proves they were as intelligent as us, in some ways more adaptable than us. They made fire, they crossed oceans, they set traps for hunting. They cried for their dead. And they are the roots upon which we stand today, walking on the moon and sending rockets to Mars. So next time you think of yourself as modern and smart, remember that this smartness began millions of years ago on the savannas of Africa in the hands of a black-skinned, blue-eyed young man. That's all for today. If you liked it, please like, share, and yes, history is still changing. Who knows what new information the next discovery will bring us? Until then, take care, stay well, goodbye. Welcome back, everyone. This is of our series on 15 crazy revelations about the first prehistoric men. In the first part, we covered everything from the Nutcracker Man to the hybrid girl with a Neanderthal mother and Denisovan father. If you haven't seen that yet, I suggest watching it first because today we're going even deeper. Today's revelations are even more mind-blowing. We'll talk about cannibalism, ancient art, mysterious extinctions, and secrets hidden in your own DNA that you never knew. So let's begin. 16th revelation. The cannibals of the... Let's start with the 16th revelation. This one is disturbing, but scientifically proven. Our ancestors sometimes ate each other. In Spain's Atapuerca Mountains, there's a cave called Gran Dolina. Here, scientists found remains of Homo antecessor, an early human species that lived about 900,000 years ago, and the bones told a horrific story. They had cut marks, the same kind of marks made when butchering animals for meat. The bones were broken in specific ways to extract marrow. The evidence suggests that these early humans practiced cannibalism, not as a starvation survival measure, but as a regular part of their culture. They were eating members of their own species, possibly rival groups, and treating them exactly like food animals. This challenges our romantic view of the past. Life was brutal, and survival sometimes meant crossing lines we consider unthinkable today. 17th revelation. The first artists were Neanderthals. 17th revelation. For a long time, we believed that only modern humans created art. We thought art required symbolic thinking, which was unique to Homo sapiens. Neanderthals were seen as simple brutes who couldn't create anything beautiful. That changed in 2018. In 3 caves in Spain, La Pasiega, Maltravieso, and Ardalas, scientists made an incredible discovery. Red paintings on the cave walls, hand stencils, lines, and animal shapes. They dated these paintings using uranium-thorium method, which is very accurate. The result was shocking. The oldest painting was at least 64,000 years old. Neanderthals disappeared from Europe around 40,000 years ago. Modern arrived around 42,000 years ago. So 64,000 years ago, only Neanderthals were in Spain. That means Neanderthals created these paintings. Neanderthals were artists. They had symbolic thought. They decorated their world. Everything we thought about them was wrong. They weren't dumb brutes. They were us, just a different branch of the human family. 18th revelation. The 300,000-year-old tools. 18th revelation. We talked about ancient tools before, but this one pushes the timeline even further back. In Kenya, along the shores of Lake Victoria, there's a place called Nyanga. Here, archaeologists found something extraordinary in 2023. Hundreds of stone tools, the kind we call Oldowan tools, the oldest known tool technology. They were found alongside teeth of ancient hippos that had been butchered. The dating showed these tools were 2.9 million years old. That's 300,000 years older than any previously found Oldowan tools. And here's the really interesting part. No human fossils were found with these tools, so we don't know who made them. It could have been Australopithecus, or maybe Paranthropus, or maybe some unknown species. This means tool-making began much earlier than we thought, and the invention of stone tools might have happened multiple times by multiple human species independently. 19th revelation. The Hobbit's brain. 19th revelation. Back to the Hobbit of Flores Island. We mentioned them earlier, but new research has revealed something even stranger about these tiny humans. The Hobbit's brain was small, about the size of a chimpanzee's brain, around 400 cubic centimeters. Modern humans have brains around 1,400 cubic centimeters, so you'd expect the Hobbit to be unintelligent, right? Wrong. Scientists scanned the Hobbit's skull using CT technology to create a virtual brain cast. They found that, despite its small size, the brain was highly organized. The parts associated with higher cognitive function, like decision-making and planning, were well developed. The brain had folded in a way similar to modern humans, not like chimpanzees. This suggests that brain size isn't everything. Organization matters. The Hobbit was small-brained but smart. They made tools, they hunted, they possibly used fire. They survived on that island for hundreds of thousands of years. Size didn't limit their intelligence. 20th revelation. The Red Deer Cave People. 20th revelation. In southern China, near the border with Vietnam, there's a cave called Malodong, or Red Deer Cave. In 1979, scientists found remains of strange humans there, but they were forgotten for decades. When researchers finally studied them in 2012, they were shocked. These people lived only 11,000 to 14,000 years ago. That's very recent. By that time, modern humans were everywhere. Agriculture was about to begin. But the Red Deer Cave people didn't look fully modern. They had features reminiscent of much older humans: thick skulls, prominent brow ridges, large teeth, and small brains. They also had features unlike any known human species. Their chins were weak, their faces were short and flat, and their molars were huge. Scientists are still debating what they were. Could they be a late surviving archaic human population, like a remnant of Homo erectus? Or could they be modern humans with some unusual traits? Or maybe they were hybrids, mixing with some unknown species. The mystery remains unsolved, but one thing is clear. Until very recently, there were humans on Earth who were not quite like us. 21st Revelation. The earliest burial. 21st Revelation. We talked about burials before, but this one is the oldest known. In Kenya, archaeologists found a child's skeleton buried in a cave called Pangaya Saidi. The child was about 3 years old, and they named him Mtoto, which means child in Swahili. He was buried carefully, curled up on his side as if sleeping. His body was placed in a specially dug pit and covered with earth. This happened 78,000 years ago. What makes this special is who buried him. The tools found nearby are Middle Stone Age tools associated with early Homo sapiens in Africa. But at 78,000 years ago, these humans were not behaviorally modern in other ways. They didn't create art, they didn't have complex symbolic culture. Yet they buried their dead with care. This shows that the impulse to honor the dead, to perform rituals for the departed, is very old. It predates art, predates complex culture. It might be one of the first things that made us human. 22nd Revelation. The Denisovan face. 22nd Revelation, we talked about Denisovans earlier. We know them mostly from DNA because their fossils are so rare. But in 2019, scientists did something remarkable. They reconstructed the face of a Denisovan based only on DNA. Using a technique called DNA methylation mapping, they analyzed the chemical patterns on Denisovan DNA and predicted which genes were active. From this, they could predict physical features. Then they created a facial reconstruction. The Denisovan girl they reconstructed had a wide head, a low forehead, a wide nose, and a massive jaw. She looked like something between a Neanderthal and a modern human, but with unique features. This is the first time anyone has seen the face of a human species known only from genetic fragments. It's a strange feeling, isn't it? To look at the face of someone who lived 80,000 years ago, whose entire species is extinct, but whose DNA lives on in people alive today. 23rd Revelation. The interbreeding map. 23rd Revelation. We know humans interbred with Neanderthals and Denisovans. But new research shows it happened more often and in more. Scientists have now found evidence of interbreeding with at least 3 different archaic human populations. Besides Neanderthals and Denisovans, there was a third group, sometimes called ghost population, that contributed DNA to modern humans. We have no fossils of this group, only genetic traces. In West Africans, there's DNA from an unknown archaic human that split from our lineage about 500,000 years ago. In Asian populations, there's evidence of multiple Denisovan-like groups, not just one. And some Pacific Islanders have DNA from 2 different Denisovan populations. The picture emerging is complex. Our ancestors didn't just replace other humans. They mingled with them repeatedly across continents. We are a mosaic species, made up of bits and pieces from many human lineages. 24th Revelation. The giant ground sloth hunters. 24th Revelation. When we think of early humans hunting, we think of deer or mammoths. But in South America, humans hunted something much stranger. In Argentina, at a site called Campo Laborde, archaeologists found remains of giant ground sloths. These were enormous creatures, up to 4 meters tall, weighing several tons. They were related to modern tree sloths, but were the size of elephants. And they had cut marks on their bones, made by stone tools. The date is about 12,600 years ago. This was soon after humans first arrived in South America. These early Americans, armed with simple stone tools, were hunting and butchering giant sloths. Imagine the courage it took to face such a beast with nothing but spears. This also shows that humans contributed to the extinction of these giant animals. When humans arrived in the Americas, many large species disappeared. Hunting was likely part of the reason. 25th revelation. A 500,000-year-old wooden structure. 25th revelation. We always think of stone tools when we think of ancient humans. Stone preserves, wood rots. So we rarely find wooden artifacts. But when we do, they change everything. In Zambia, at a site called Kalambo Falls, archaeologists found something extraordinary in 2023. Wooden structures. 2 interlocking logs shaped with tools with a notch cut into one to fit the other. This was intentionally built, like the foundation of a structure. The date? 476,000 years ago. That's 500,000 years ago. The humans who built this were not Homo sapiens. They were probably Homo heidelbergensis, an earlier species. They were building structures, possibly platforms or walkways, using woodworking techniques that required planning and skill. This pushes back the history of construction by hundreds of thousands of years. Our ancestors were carpenters long before they were artists or farmers. 26th revelation. The Neanderthal medicine cabinet. 26th revelation. We thought Neanderthals were simple hunters who ate only meat. Then came a discovery in El Cedrón cave in Spain. In the dental plaque of Neanderthal teeth, scientists found something unexpected. Chemical traces of 2 plants, yarrow and chamomile. These plants have no nutritional value. They taste bitter, but they have medicinal properties. Yarrow is used for pain and fever. Chamomile is used for digestion and inflammation. Even more surprising, one of the Neanderthals had traces of poplar bark, which contains salicylic acid, the active ingredient in aspirin. And this individual also had evidence of a dental abscess and a gut parasite. This suggests that Neanderthals were self-medicating. They knew which plants to eat when they were sick. They had knowledge passed down through generations about natural remedies. They were not just surviving, they were practicing a form of medicine. 27th revelation. The Lapedo child. 27th revelation. In Portugal, in the Lapedo Valley, archaeologists found a child's skeleton in 1998. The child was about 4 years old, buried with care, with a pierced shell and red ochre. The date was about 24,000 years ago. When scientists examined the skeleton, they found something shocking. The child had features of both modern humans and Neanderthals. The jaw and chin were modern, but the limb proportions and certain skull features were Neanderthal-like. This child was a hybrid born from mixed parents. But here's the thing. Neanderthals supposedly went extinct about 40,000 years ago. This child lived 24,000 years ago. That's 16,000 years after Neanderthals supposedly disappeared. This suggests that Neanderthals didn't just vanish. They lingered, possibly in isolated pockets, and continued to interact with modern humans for thousands of years. The Lapedo child is proof that the extinction was a slow process, not a sudden event. Neanderthal genes flowed into modern human populations for a long time. 28th revelation. The fox domestication. 28th revelation. We know dogs were domesticated from wolves. But recent evidence suggests humans might have domesticated another animal much earlier, foxes. In a site in Jordan, archaeologists found a burial dating to about 16,500 years ago. In the grave, alongside a human, was a complete fox skeleton. The fox was buried carefully, positioned similarly to the human. This was not a food animal. This was a companion. Chemical analysis showed the fox ate a similar diet to the human, suggesting it was fed by people. This is the earliest evidence of a possible domesticated fox. It predates the earliest known dog burials. This suggests that humans experimented with domesticating many animals, not just the ones that eventually became our common pets. The fox was man's best friend before the dog. 29th revelation. The underwater caves. 29th revelation. During the last ice age, sea levels were much lower. Many areas that are underwater today were dry land, and humans lived there. In Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, there are underwater caves called cenotes. Divers have explored them and found something remarkable: human skeletons and animal bones from the Ice Age. One skeleton, named Naya, is about 13,000 years old. She was a teenage girl who fell into the cave and died. Her bones were preserved perfectly in the underwater environment. These caves hold secrets about the first Americans. They show that humans reached the Americas earlier than we thought, and they adapted to diverse environments. But as the Ice Age ended and sea levels rose, these sites were flooded, preserving them like time capsules. There are probably thousands of such sites underwater waiting to be discovered. Much of human history is under the waves. 30th revelation. The super-archaics. 30th revelation. This is the final one, and perhaps the most mysterious. In 2020, scientists studying Denisovan DNA made a stunning discovery. They found that Denisovans themselves had interbred with another, even older human lineage. This lineage split from the rest of the human family about 2 million years ago. Scientists call them super-archaics. These super-archaics were not Neanderthals, not Denisovans, not Homo erectus. They were something older, something we have no fossils for. They lived in Asia, possibly alongside other human species, and contributed DNA to Denisovans, which then passed to us. This means there were at least 5 distinct human lineages existing at the same time in the last million years: Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, Denisovans, Homo floresiensis, and these super-archaics. And they all interacted, interbred, and competed. The human family tree is not a tree. It's more like a braided stream with lineages splitting and merging repeatedly. We are the product of millions of years of mixing and mingling. So here we are at the end of 30 revelations now about our ancient ancestors. And what have we learned? We learned that Neanderthals were artists and doctors. We learned that tiny hobbits had organized brains. We learned that giant sloths were hunted by brave humans. We learned that wooden structures were built 500,000 years ago. We learned that foxes might have been our first pets, and we learned that mysterious super-archaics lurk in our DNA, ghosts from 2 million years ago. The story of human evolution is not simple. It's messy, complicated, and full of surprises. Every new fossil, every new DNA analysis changes what we thought we knew. And that's the beauty of science. It never stops questioning. It never stops discovering. We are not the only humans who ever lived. We are just the last ones standing. And in our genes, in our cultures, in our very bodies, we carry the memory of all those who came before. The Nutcracker, the Hobbit, the Dragon Man, the Denisovan, the Neanderthal. They all live on in us. Thank you for watching. If you want more, let me know in the comments. There are more revelations waiting to be uncovered. Until then, take care of yourselves and remember, you are part of an incredible story that's millions of years old. Goodbye. Welcome back, everyone. This is part 3 of our series on 15 crazy revelations about the first prehistoric men. We've covered 30 revelations so far, from the Nutcracker Man to the super archaics. But the story doesn't end there. In fact, every month, new discoveries are reshaping what we thought we knew. In this final part, we're going to cover the most recent findings, fossils that were announced just months ago, DNA studies published in late 2025, and debates that are happening right now in the scientific community. These revelations are so fresh, some of them haven't even made it into textbooks yet. So let's begin the final journey into our deep past. 31st Revelation. The face that changes everything. 31st Revelation. In December 2025, a team of scientists published something remarkable in the journal Nature Communications. They reconstructed a 1.5 million year old face from Ethiopia, and what they found challenges everything we thought about the first human migration out of Africa. The fossil is called DAN5, found at a site called Gona in Ethiopia's Afar region. It belongs to Homo erectus, the first human ancestor with modern body proportions and the first to leave Africa. But when scientists virtually reconstructed the face using CT scans and 3D modeling, they saw something unexpected. The face was surprisingly primitive. The nose bridge was flat, the molars were large, and the overall structure looked more like earlier species like Homo habilis than classic Homo erectus. Yet this individual lived 1.5 million years ago, long after Homo erectus had supposedly evolved its modern features. Dr. Karen Babb, who led the reconstruction, described it as a very complicated 3D puzzle. The team spent a year piecing together 4 fragments of the face and attaching them to a previously found brain case. The result was the most complete skull of a fossil human from the Horn of Africa in this time period. What does this mean? It suggests that Homo erectus was more diverse than we thought. Different populations retain different combinations of primitive and advanced features. And this particular population at Gona may have preserved the anatomy of the very first humans who left Africa 300,000 years earlier. Dr. Yusuke Kaifu from the University of Tokyo said, "I'll never forget the shock I felt when Dr. Babb first showed me the reconstructed face and jaw. The shock is now changing our understanding of human evolution." 32nd Revelation. The hobbits weren't alone. 32nd Revelation. We talked about the Hobbit of Flores Island in previous parts, but new evidence suggests they weren't the only small humans in Southeast Asia. In October 2025, researchers announced that a 700,000-year-old fossil from Flores called Matamenga shows even smaller individuals than the Hobbit. This confirms that the Hobbit's small size wasn't a one-off anomaly. It was the result of long-term evolution on an isolated island. But here's the really interesting part. The Matamenga fossils have features that don't perfectly match the later Hobbit. This suggests that the Flores Islanders might have been a distinct population, or that there was more than one wave of colonization. Meanwhile, in the Philippines, excavations at Calao Cave have revealed more remains of Homo luzonensis, another tiny human species that lived 50,000 years ago. These were also small-bodied, with curved fingers adapted for climbing. So what we're seeing is a pattern. When humans reached islands in Southeast Asia, they repeatedly evolved smaller bodies. This happened on Flores, on Luzon, and possibly on other islands we haven't discovered yet. Island life shaped human evolution in ways we're only beginning to understand. 33rd revelation. The Yunxian skull rewrites the timeline. 33rd revelation. In February 2026, just last month, a study published in Science Advances dropped a bombshell. Homo erectus arrived in Asia 600,000 years earlier than we thought. The Yunxian site in China has yielded 3 nearly complete Homo erectus skulls. For years, scientists believed they were about 1.1 million years old. But an international team used a new dating method called aluminum-26 and beryllium-10 burial dating. They analyzed isotopes in the sediment at the same level as the fossils. The result? The fossils are about 1.7 million years old. That's 600,000 years older than previously believed. Lead author Hua Tu explained the method. When cosmic rays hit quartz minerals, they produce aluminum and beryllium isotopes. Once buried underground, production stops and radioactive decay takes over. By comparing the ratio of these isotopes, scientists can calculate how long the material has been buried, up to 5 million years. This pushes back the timeline of human dispersal dramatically. Our ancestors were spreading across Asia much earlier than we imagined. As Professor Christopher Bay from the University of Hawaii put it, these findings challenge long-held assumptions regarding when the earliest hominins are thought to have moved out of Africa and into Asia. 34th revelation. The Dragon Man's family. 34th revelation. Remember Dragon Man or Homo longi from Part 1? In September 2025, new research published in the journal Science revealed the Dragon Man's lineage goes back much further than we thought. A skull called Yunxian II, found in Hubei Province, China in 1990, was recently reanalyzed using high-resolution CT and 3D scanning. For decades, it was classified as Homo erectus. But the new reconstruction shows something different. The skull has a mix of primitive and advanced features. It has a low, flat forehead, like older species, but also flatter cheekbones and a larger brain size, over 1,100 cubic centimeters. These features align it with Homo longi and other Middle Pleistocene fossils. Lead researcher Ni Shijun from the Chinese Academy of Sciences concluded that Yunxian II is not Homo erectus, but an early member of the Homo longi lineage. And here's the kicker. It's about 1 million years old. This means the Dragon Man lineage existed 1 million years ago, much earlier than previously thought. It also suggests that Denisovans, the mysterious human species known only from DNA, might actually be part of the Homo longi group. As Ni said, the findings suggest that by 1 million years ago, our ancient ancestors had already diverged into distinct groups, leading to a more complex evolutionary history than once believed. 35th revelation. The timeline shift. 35th revelation. If Dragon Man existed 1 million years ago, what does that mean for the rest of the human family? Professor Chris Stringer from the Natural History Museum in London, who co-authored the study, explained the implications. If Homo longi was already present 1 million years ago, then the split between the lineages leading to modern humans, Neanderthals, and Denisovans must have happened much earlier. Stringer told BBC that this analysis has significantly pushed back the evolutionary timeline of large-brained humans by at least 500,000 years. He suggests that there may be 1 million-year-old Homo sapiens fossils out there. We just haven't found them yet. This means that 3 human species, Homo sapiens, Homo neanderthalensis, and Homo longi/Denisovans, may have coexisted for about 800,000 years. That's almost 1 million years of interaction, interbreeding, and competition. Professor Ni Shijun added, human evolution is like a tree. This tree has multiple branches, three of which are closely related to each other, may have hybridized and coexisted for nearly 1 million years. This is an incredible result. 36th revelation. The second Denisovan genome. 36th revelation. In October 2025, scientists achieved something remarkable. They sequenced a second high-quality Denisovan genome. The first Denisovan genome came from a finger bone of a woman who lived about 65,000 years ago. The new genome comes from a molar found in the same cave, Denisova Cave in Siberia. This one belonged to a man who lived about 200,000 years ago. The new genome reveals several surprises. First, this Denisovan man came from a small, isolated group. Second, his group had mixed with early Neanderthals and then was later replaced by other Denisovans who had mixed with different Neanderthals. But the biggest surprise is this. The Denisovans also interbred with an unknown human population, one that had diverged from the rest of the human family even before the ancestors of Denisovans and modern humans split. These are the super-archaics we mentioned in. This new genome confirms that at least 3 distinct Denisovan populations existed, each with different histories of mixing with Neanderthals and other archaic humans. As the researchers put it, the Denisovans were not a single, uniform group. They were a diverse branch of humanity with a complex history. 37th revelation. The Denisovan legacy in modern people. 37th revelation. With 2 high-quality Denisovan genomes, scientists can now trace Denisovan ancestry in modern humans with unprecedented precision. What they found is fascinating. Oceanians and South Asians independently inherited DNA from a deeply diverged Denisovan population that was likely isolated in South Asia. This suggests that the ancestors of Oceanians migrated through South Asia, where they encountered and mixed with this Denisovan group. East Asians, however, do not share this particular Denisovan component. Their ancestors probably arrived in East Asia by a different route, possibly a northerly one, and mixed with different Denisovan populations. This paints a picture of multiple human migrations, multiple encounters, and multiple mixing events across Asia. Our family tree is not a simple branching diagram. It's more like a braided river, with lineages separating and coming back together repeatedly. 38th revelation. The burial debate continues. 38th revelation. This one is about a fierce debate that's still ongoing in paleoanthropology. Did a small-brained species called Homo naledi bury their dead long before modern humans? Homo naledi was discovered in 2015 in the Rising Star Cave System in South Africa. The remains of at least 15 individuals were found deep underground in narrow, dark chambers far from the cave entrance. The discoverers, led by Lee Berger, proposed that these bodies were intentionally deposited there. In other words, that Homo naledi practiced deliberate burial. The claim is extraordinary because Homo naledi lived about 240,000 to 300,000 years ago and had a brain about 1/3 the size of modern humans. If true, this would mean that burial practices emerged more than 120,000 years before our own species began burying their dead. In September 2025, Berger's team published a new peer-reviewed paper defending their hypothesis. They argued that in at least 3 locations, the bodies were covered with sediment shortly after death, ruling out natural processes like falling into the cave or being washed in by water. Co-author John Hawkes explained why they published openly. You can't do anything interesting without facing some challenging reviews. What we need to support as scientists is for the work to be as transparent as possible. 39th revelation. The skeptics respond. 39th revelation. But the debate over Homo naledi is far from settled. Other scientists remain unconvinced. In a response published in December 2025, a team led by Maria Martignon Torres argued that there is still no scientific evidence that Homo naledi buried their dead and produced rock art. They pointed out that natural agents and post-depositional processes could explain the accumulation of bodies. They also questioned the so-called engravings on the cave walls, arguing that detailed analyses are needed to prove they are human-made and that they can be securely linked to Homo naledi. The same applies to evidence of fire use. This debate highlights how science works. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. The Homo naledi burial hypothesis remains controversial, and only more research will settle the question. But regardless of the outcome, one thing is clear. Our understanding of human cognitive evolution is being challenged. If a small-brained species could bury their dead, then the link between brain size and complex behavior may not be as simple as we thought. 40th revelation. The ghost population confirmed. 40th revelation. We've mentioned ghost populations before. Ancient humans known only from DNA traces. The new Denisovan genome confirms their existence. The Denisovan man from 200,000 years ago carries DNA from a Neanderthal population that lived 7,000 to 13,000 years before him. But here's the catch. This Neanderthal DNA doesn't match any known Neanderthal genome. It comes from a Neanderthal group that hasn't been sequenced yet. A ghost Neanderthal population. Even more intriguing, the Denisovans also carry DNA from an even older group, one that diverged before the split of Denisovans and modern humans. This confirms the existence of superarchaics, a human lineage that lived alongside other humans for hundreds of thousands of years. These findings reveal just how complex the human story is. We are not descended from a single, pure lineage. We are hybrids, mosaics, the product of countless encounters between different human groups across hundreds of thousands of years. 41st revelation. The 1.7 million year old mystery. 41st revelation. The new dating of the Yunxian skulls to 1.7 million years raises an important question. Who got to Asia first? Homo erectus is the obvious candidate. But as Professor Christopher Bay noted, if H. erectus was not the earliest occupant to reach Asia, alternative species must be considered. What if other human species reached Asia before Homo erectus? What if the first migration out of Africa happened much earlier, by species we haven't even identified yet? Some scientists have suggested that Homo habilis, an earlier species with smaller brains, might have left Africa. Others point to fossils like the 1.8 million year old Dmanisi skulls from Georgia, which show a mix of primitive and advanced features. The Yunxian dating adds another piece to this puzzle. It suggests that by 1.7 million years ago, humans were already well established in Eastern Asia. The migration must have happened even earlier, possibly around 2 million years ago. We're still searching for the earliest Asians. They're out there, waiting to be found. 42nd revelation. The three branches. 42nd revelation. With all these new discoveries, scientists are piecing together a new picture of human evolution. Instead of a simple linear progression from primitive to advanced, we now see three main branches in the human family tree from about 1 million years ago onward. Branch 1, Homo sapiens, our own lineage, leading to modern humans. Branch 2, Homo neanderthalensis, the Neanderthals, who lived in Europe and Western Asia. Branch 3, Homo longi, the Dragon Man lineage, which includes Denisovans and possibly other Asian groups. These three branches shared a common ancestor about 1.5 million years ago, possibly Homo erectus, or a similar species. They then evolved separately but remained close enough to interbreed when they met. This three-branch model explains many puzzling fossils from the Middle Pleistocene, a period scientists used to call the muddle in the middle. Those hard-to-classify fossils now fit as variants of these three main lineages. 43rd Revelation, the South Asian Denisovans. 43rd Revelation. One of the most exciting findings from the new Denisovan genome is the evidence for a distinct Denisovan population in South Asia. Present-day Oceanians and South Asians carry Denisovan DNA from a deeply diverged lineage. This suggests that a separate Denisovan group lived in South Asia, isolated from other Denisovans, for hundreds of thousands of years. When the ancestors of Oceanians migrated through South Asia on their way to Australia and New Guinea, they met and mixed with this group. Later, the ancestors of South Asians arrived and also mixed with them or with their descendants. East Asians, however, lacked a specific Denisovan component. Their ancestors probably took a different route, possibly through Central Asia or along the coast of China, where they encountered different Denisovan populations. This paints a picture of multiple migrations, multiple meetings, and multiple mixtures across Asia. The peopling of our continent was far more complex than we ever imagined. 44th Revelation. The Hobbit's Brain Revisited. 44th Revelation. We talked about the Hobbit's brain in Part 2, but new research adds another layer to the story. Remember, the Hobbit had a brain about the size of a chimpanzee's, around 400 cubic centimeters. But that small brain was highly organized, with folded patterns similar to modern humans. Now scientists are asking, how did this happen? How did a human species evolve such an efficient brain in such a small package? The leading theory is island dwarfism. When large animals are isolated on islands with limited resources, they often evolve smaller bodies to survive. But their brains don't always shrink proportionally. In some cases, the brain-to-body ratio actually increases. This might explain the hobbits' cognitive abilities. Despite their small size, they made tools, hunted, and survived for hundreds of thousands of years. They were small but smart. And if a small brain species could be smart, what does that say about the relationship between brain size and intelligence? Maybe we've been focusing on the wrong metric all along. 45th Revelation. The Future of Human Evolution. Research. 45th and final revelation. Where do we go from here? The pace of discovery in paleoanthropology is accelerating. New dating methods like aluminum-26/beryllium-10 are pushing back timelines. New imaging techniques like CT scanning and 3D reconstruction are revealing hidden details in old fossils. And ancient DNA is uncovering entire human species we never knew existed. But many mysteries remain. We still don't know who the super archaics were. The ghost population that contribute DNA to Denisovans. We don't know if Homo naledi really buried their dead. We don't know how many human species existed, or how many times they met and mixed. Every year brings new surprises. The Gona face from 1.5 million years ago. The Yunxian skulls dated to 1.7 million years. The Dragon Man lineage pushed back to 1 million years. The second Denisovan genome revealing hidden populations. And there's more to come. Scientists are now searching for DNA in older fossils, pushing the limits of ancient DNA technology. They're exploring underwater caves that were dry land during the ice ages. They're using artificial intelligence to analyze fossil shapes and predict relationships. The next decade will bring discoveries we can't even imagine. And so we come to the end of our journey. 45 revelations about our ancient ancestors, from the Nutcracker Man to the Super Archaics, from the Hobbit to the Dragon Man, from the first tools to the first burials. What have we learned? we learned that human evolution is not a straight line. It's a bush, a braided stream, a complex network of lineages splitting and merging across millions of years. We learned that our ancestors were not primitive brutes. They were artists, doctors, carpenters, sailors, and explorers. They crossed oceans, built structures, and honored their dead. We learned that we are not pure. We are hybrids, carrying DNA from Neanderthals, Denisovans, and ghost populations we've never seen. We learned that the past is not settled. Every new fossil, every new DNA analysis, every new dating method changes what we thought we knew. And we learned that the story of humanity is still being written. The fossils we've found are just a tiny sample of what's out there. The DNA we've sequenced is just a glimpse of the genetic diversity that once existed. There are countless discoveries waiting to be made. So the next time you look in the mirror, remember, you are looking at the result of 7 million years of evolution, 2 million years of migration, and countless encounters between different human species across every continent. You are a living museum of human history. Your genes carry memories of Africa, Asia, and Europe. Your body carries adaptations from ice ages and warm periods. Your mind carries the accumulated knowledge of countless generations. And the story doesn't end with you. Evolution is still happening. Humans are still changing. The future of our species is being written right now, by us, for those who will come after. Thank you for joining me on this journey through our deep past. If you've watched all 3 parts, you now know more about human evolution than most people on the planet. Share what you've learned. Keep asking questions, and never stop being curious about where we came from. Because the more we learn about our ancestors, the more we learn about ourselves. Goodbye, and take care. Welcome back, everyone. This is part 4 of our series on 15 crazy revelations about the first prehistoric men. When we started this journey, I thought 3 parts would be enough. But the discoveries keep coming. Every month, sometimes every week, new fossils are unearthed. New DNA is sequenced. And new studies are published that change everything we thought we knew. In this 4th part, we're covering the most recent findings, some published just weeks ago. We'll talk about a major discovery that fills a critical gap in the human family tree. New evidence about who our ancestors were mating with, and surprising finds from China that are rewriting the story of East Asia. Let's begin. 31st Revelation. The Nutcracker's Northern Journey. 31st Revelation. Let's start with a discovery that was published in the journal Nature just last month, in January 2026. For decades, scientists have been digging in Ethiopia's Afar region. This is one of the most famous fossil hunting grounds in the world. It's where Lucy, the 3.2-million-year-old Australopithecus, was found. It's where some of the oldest Homo sapiens fossils, dating to 160,000 years ago, have been discovered. But there was always a mystery. One group of ancient humans was conspicuously absent from the Afar region, Paranthropus, also known as Nutcracker Men. These were the ones with massive jaws and huge molar teeth, specialized for eating tough plant foods. Their fossils had been found in southern and eastern Africa, but never in the Afar. Scientists thought they never made it that far north, maybe because the environment wasn't suitable, or because they couldn't compete with other species there. That assumption has now been shattered. A team led by Professor Zeresene Alemseged from the University of Chicago discovered a fossil in the Mille Logia research area of Ethiopia's Afar region. It's a lower jaw, part of a mandible, with a partial molar crown. They dated it to 2.6 million years old. This is not just any Paranthropus fossil. It's the northernmost Paranthropus ever found, 1,000 kilometers further north than any previous discovery, and it's also one of the oldest, pushing the origin of the genus back closer to 3 million years. Dr. Fred Spoor from the Natural History Museum in London analyzed the fossil using advanced digital imaging to visualize internal structures like tooth roots. He found that the jaw shows a mixture of characteristics, some very robust features like later Paranthropus, but also some primitive traits that might be inherited from an earlier ancestor. What does this mean? It means Paranthropus was far more widespread than we thought. Despite being specialized for a tough plant diet, they were adaptable. They could live in different environments and compete successfully with other hominins across a vast range. As Dr. Spoor put it, the assumed absence was the result of an incomplete fossil record. But here's something even more interesting. At the same time and place, another species with huge molars was living, Australopithecus garhi. This is the first time in human evolutionary history that we have two heavy chewers coexisting. Did they compete for food? Not necessarily. Dental size alone doesn't tell us everything about diet, but it raises fascinating questions about how multiple human species shared the landscape. The discovery highlights how little we still know about the crucial period between 2.5 and 3 million years ago, when both Paranthropus and the Homo lineage first appeared. There's so much more waiting to be found. 32nd revelation. The Moroccan ancestor. 32nd revelation. Also in January 2026, another bombshell dropped in the pages of Nature. This one comes from Morocco, and it might fill a critical gap in our family tree. In a cave called Grotte Hominides at Thomas Quarry in Casablanca, scientists have been digging for years. They found fossils, 2 partial lower jaws, numerous teeth, and some vertebrae. For a long time, they weren't sure exactly how old these fossils were or where they fit in the human family. Now they know. An international team led by Jean-Jacques Hublin from the Max Planck Institute analyzed the surrounding sediments. They found that the fossils come from a time close to a major shift in Earth's magnetic field about 773,000 years ago. That's a crucial date. It's around the same time as Homo antecessor in Spain, a species that some scientists think might be the last common ancestor of modern humans, Neanderthals and Denisovans. But here's the thing. The Moroccan fossils look different from Homo antecessor. They show a mix of old and modern features. The shape of the jaw is closer to Homo erectus and other archaic Africans. But the pattern of molar sizes resembles early Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. They're like a mosaic, combining primitive and advanced traits. Hublin and his colleagues believe these Moroccan fossils may be close to the point where African and Eurasian human lineages began to diverge. They may not be the exact last common ancestor, but they're close ancestors. And importantly, they support an African origin for our species, not a Eurasian one. As Hublin told Archaeology magazine, this supports a deep African origin for Homo sapiens and argues against Eurasian origin scenarios. This is significant because some fossils from Europe, like Homo antecessor, had led scientists to consider whether the common ancestor might have lived in Eurasia. Now, with well-dated African fossils of the same age, the pendulum swings back to Africa. These Moroccan fossils, at 773,000 years old, are like a bridge. They connect the older Homo erectus populations to the later Neanderthals and modern humans. They show us that the story of our origins is deeply African, and that North Africa was a key region in that story. 33rd revelation. The Neanderthal romance pattern confirmed 33rd revelation. Now we move from fossils to DNA. And this revelation, published just last week in the journal Science, confirms something we suspected but couldn't prove. We've known for years that modern humans and Neanderthals interbred. Most people of non-African descent have between 1% and 4% Neanderthal DNA. But the distribution of that DNA isn't random. Some parts of the human genome, including most of the X chromosome, have almost no Neanderthal ancestry. Scientists call these Neanderthal deserts. There were two main theories about why these deserts exist. One theory said that Neanderthal genetic variants were harmful to modern humans, so they got quickly weeded out by natural selection. The other theory said that the Neanderthal versions of certain genes worked fine for Neanderthals, but not for modern humans, and vice versa. If that were true, then Neanderthals with human ancestry would have their own human DNA deserts. To test this, a team led by evolutionary geneticist Alexander Platt from the University of Pennsylvania did something new. Instead of looking at modern human genomes, they looked at Neanderthal genomes. They analyzed 3 female Neanderthals who lived 122,000, 80,000, and 52,000 years ago. All of them had distant human ancestry. What they found was striking. Across most of the genome, there were indeed human DNA deserts, regions where human DNA was absent. But there was one glaring exception, the X chromosome. The Neanderthal X chromosome had, on average, 62% more human DNA than the non-sex chromosomes. This pattern can only be explained one way. The interbreeding wasn't symmetrical, it was biased. As Platt told Nature, the evidence suggests that female Homo sapiens and male Neanderthals mated more often than did male H. sapiens and female Neanderthals. Think about what this means. In those ancient encounters, the most common pairing was a Neanderthal man and a modern human woman. Why this pattern existed, we don't know. Maybe it was cultural. Maybe it was demographic. Maybe Neanderthal groups had more males, or human groups had more females. But the genetic evidence is now clear. As Platt noted, human geneticists have often taken a bizarrely clinical approach to studying ancient genomes. But these are all people, and we know that people have bias, and we know people have preferences. Behavior shaped human evolution, and now we have the data to prove it. 34th revelation. The Xigu toolmakers. 34th revelation. Now let's travel to China, to a site called Xigu in Henan province. What was found there, published in Nature Communications in January 2026, is completely changing our understanding of early human technology in East Asia. For decades, archaeologists had a certain view of East Asia during the Paleolithic. Between 300,000 and 50,000 years ago, the stone tools found there seemed simple, unchanging. Scholars describe the region as conservative in its cultural development. Major technological changes were thought to begin only about 40,000 years ago. That view is now dead. At the Xigu site, an international team led by the Institute of Vertebrate Paleontology and Paleoanthropology in Beijing excavated 2,601 stone artifacts. Using multiple luminescence dating methods, they determined that these artifacts date from 160,000 to 72,000 years ago. And what they found is remarkable. The ancient inhabitants of Xigu were using sophisticated stone tool-making methods. They produced small flakes using techniques like core on flake, where previously detached large stone flakes served as a core for crafting smaller, specialized flakes. They also used discoid technology, where a lens-shaped core was systematically struck from its perimeter toward the center to produce small, sharp cutting flakes. These techniques show planned technological organization. These weren't simple, improvised tools. They were carefully designed and systematically produced. But the most exciting discovery is this. Some of these stone tools were hafted. That means they were attached to handles or shafts, creating composite tools. This is the earliest known evidence of hafting technology in East Asia. Through traceological analysis, studying the wear patterns on the tools, researchers identified two different handle types. Some tools were inserted into handles, others were bound alongside them. This required complex planning, skilled craftsmanship, and an understanding of how to enhance tool performance. As researcher Yue Jianping explained, prehistoric inhabitants in this region were able to produce small flakes with sophisticated methods and turn them into a range of implements, including scrapers, drills, and engravers. This discovery pushes back the timeline for hafting technologies in East Asia by tens of thousands of years. And it's not an isolated case. Other Chinese sites like Lingjing in Suqiang have yielded evidence of discoid technology, bone tool production, and the use of ochre. Together, this evidence is reshaping the traditional narrative. East Asia wasn't a backwater of human evolution. It was a place of innovation and adaptation, where humans developed complex technologies to cope with changing environments. And here's the really interesting part. During this period, multiple large-brained hominin species coexisted in China, including Homo longi, dragon man, and Homo juluensis. The behavioral complexity seen at Shigu may have a biological basis. These were smart people making smart tools. 35th revelation. The Dragon Man's world. 35th revelation. Speaking of Dragon Man, let's revisit that lineage with new information from the Shigu discovery. Remember from part 3, we talked about how the Dragon Man lineage, Homo longi, has been pushed back to about 1 million years old. Now, the Shigu site gives us a window into what the world of Dragon Man's descendants might have looked like. The Shigu tools date from 160,000 to 72,000 years ago. This is exactly the time when multiple human species were living in China. Homo longi was there. Homo juluensis, another large-brained species, was there. And possibly early Homo sapiens was beginning to appear. These different human groups may have coexisted, interacted, and possibly even shared technologies. The sophisticated tool-making methods seen at Shigu, the core on flake techniques, the discoid technology, the hafted handles, represent a shared technological heritage that might have passed between different human species. Professor Yang Shixia, one of the researchers involved in the Shigu project, noted that in recent years, evidence related to complex human activities has been uncovered from many Paleolithic sites in China. Together, this evidence is reshaping the traditional narrative of human activity development and environmental adaptation in East Asia. So when we imagine prehistoric China, we shouldn't picture a single type of human slowly evolving. We should picture a landscape populated by multiple human species, some with massive brains like Dragon Man, some smaller but still smart, all interacting, competing, and sharing ideas. 36th revelation. The dating revolution. 36th revelation. Behind many of these discoveries is a revolution in dating techniques. The Moroccan fossils from Thomas Quarry were dated using paleomagnetic analysis, measuring the Earth's ancient magnetic field recorded in the sediments. The Shigu tools were dated using multiple luminescence methods. And the Paranthropus jaw from Ethiopia was dated through geological studies of the surrounding deposits. But perhaps the most exciting development is a method we mentioned in Part 3, aluminum-26 and beryllium-10 burial dating. This technique used to date the Yunxian skulls to 1.7 million years, measures isotopes produced by cosmic rays in quartz minerals. Once buried, production stops and radioactive decay takes over. By comparing the ratio of these isotopes, scientists can calculate how long the material has been buried, up to 5 million years. These new methods are pushing back timelines and revealing that human evolution is older and more complex than we thought. The Moroccan fossils at 773,000 years, the Paranthropus jaw at 2.6 million years, the Yunxian skulls at 1.7 million years, each new date adds another piece to the puzzle. And here's the thing, these methods keep improving. Fossils that were dated decades ago with older techniques are being redated. And often, the new dates are very different from the old ones. The story of human evolution is constantly being rewritten, not just by new discoveries, but by new ways of understanding old ones. 37th revelation. The coexistence puzzle. 37th revelation. With all these discoveries, one pattern is becoming clear. Human species didn't just replace each other in a simple line. They coexisted, often for hundreds of thousands of years. In Ethiopia, 2.6 million years ago, Paranthropus and Australopithecus gari lived side by side, both with massive teeth but probably different diets. In North Africa, 773,000 years ago, a population with mixed features, part Homo erectus, part modern human, lived at the same time as Homo antecessor in Europe. In China, between 160,000 and 72,000 years ago, multiple large-brained species like Homo longi and Homo juluensis shared the landscape, possibly with early Homo sapiens. And across Eurasia, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and modern humans met and mated repeatedly, leaving their genetic legacies in us today. The old model of human evolution, a ladder with one species climbing and others falling away, is dead. The new model is a bush, a braided stream, a complex network of lineages that split, merge, and coexist. As Professor Ni Shijun from the Chinese Academy of Sciences said about the Dragon Man discovery, human evolution is like a tree. This tree has multiple branches, 3 of which are closely related to each other, may have hybridized and coexisted for nearly 1 million years. 38th revelation, the behavior gap. 38th revelation. But here's a puzzle. If multiple human species coexisted for so long, why did only one survive? Why are we the last ones standing? The Shigu discovery offers a clue. The sophisticated tools found there, the hafted handles, the systematic flake production, appear around 160,000 years ago. This is roughly the same time that modern humans were emerging in Africa with similar technologies. But in China, these tools weren't necessarily made by modern humans. They could have been made by Dragon Man, or by Homo juluensis, or by some other species. So technological sophistication alone doesn't explain why modern humans survived and others didn't. Maybe it was something else. Maybe it was social organization, or language ability, or population size. Maybe it was luck. A series of environmental changes that favored one species over others. We don't know yet. But the Shigu discovery shows that the behavior gap between modern humans and other species may have been smaller than we thought. Other humans were capable of complex, innovative behaviors. They just didn't make it. 39th revelation. The North African corridor. 39th revelation. The Moroccan fossils from Thomas Quarry also highlight the importance of North Africa in human evolution. For a long time, the story of human origins focused on East Africa, the Rift Valley, Olduvai Gorge, the Afar region, and rightly so, because that's where the oldest fossils have been found. But North Africa was not a backwater. At 773,000 years ago, North Africa was a corridor. It connected Africa to Eurasia via the Sinai Peninsula and the Mediterranean coast. Populations living there could move north into Europe or south into the rest of Africa. They could mix with incoming populations from Eurasia or send genes back the other way. The Thomas Quarry fossils show that North Africa was home to populations with a mix of features, bridging the gap between older African forms and later Eurasian ones. As Jean-Jacques Heblin noted, these fossils support a deep African origin for Homo sapiens. And this isn't the only important North African site. Jebel Irhoud in Morocco has yielded modern human fossils dated to 300,000 years ago, pushing back the origin of our species by 100,000 years. North Africa is proving to be a crucial region for understanding our deep past. 40th Revelation. The limits of DNA. 40th Revelation. With all this focus on ancient DNA, it's worth remembering its limits. The Neanderthal genomes we have are few, only a handful of individuals. The Denisovan genomes are even rarer, just 2 high-quality ones so far. And for most human species, we have no DNA at all. Paranthropus, Australopithecus, Homo erectus, Homo floresiensis, their DNA is almost certainly gone, degraded by heat and time in the tropical environments where they lived. We'll never sequence their genomes. That means we have to rely on fossils, on bones and teeth, to understand their lives, and fossils are rare. The Paranthropus jaw from Ethiopia is just one bone, but it tells us that this species ranged far beyond where we've found their remains. The Moroccan jaws from Thomas Quarry are just a few fragments, but they suggest a whole population living at a key moment in time. DNA is powerful, but it's not the whole story. The fossil record, incomplete as it is, remains essential for understanding human evolution. 41st Revelation. The unknown species. 41st Revelation. Every new discovery reminds us of how much we don't know. The Paranthropus jaw from Ethiopia was found in an area that had been searched for decades. Scientists thought Paranthropus never lived there. They were wrong. The Moroccan fossils from Thomas Quarry had been sitting in collections, waiting for better dating methods and analysis. For years, their significance was unknown. The Shigu tools were unearthed from a site that could have been overlooked. Now they're changing our understanding of an entire continent. How many more species are waiting to be found? How many fossils are buried waiting for someone to dig them up? How many stories are locked in the bones of our ancestors, waiting to be told? As Dr. Fred Spoor said about the Paranthropus discovery, the discovery of Paranthropus in the Afar highlights how little is known about human evolution in eastern Africa during the crucial period between 2.5 and 3 million years ago, when the oldest fossils of this genus and the Homo lineage are found. The same could be said for every time period, every region. We found only a tiny fraction of what's out there. The human family tree is full of unknown branches waiting to be discovered. 42nd Revelation. The adaptation question. 42nd Revelation. One of the biggest questions in human evolution is, how did our ancestors adapt to changing environments? The Paranthropus jaw from Ethiopia offers a clue. Paranthropus was long thought to be a dietary specialist, limited to tough plant foods. But finding them 1,000 kilometers north of their previous range suggests they were more adaptable than we thought. The Shigu tools offer another clue. During a period of significant climate fluctuation, between 160,000 and 72,000 years ago, the inhabitants of central China developed new technologies to cope. They made composite tools, they produced standardized flakes, they adapted. And the Moroccan fossils offer a third clue. At 773,000 years ago, A population with a mix of features lived in North Africa, adapting to conditions at the crossroads of continents. What emerges is a picture of humans as adaptable creatures. Not just one species, but many, finding ways to survive in diverse environments across Africa and Eurasia. Adaptation wasn't a single event. It was an ongoing process, repeated across species and continents. 43rd Revelation. The pace of change. 43rd Revelation. Another thing these discoveries reveal is the pace of human evolution. It's both slower and faster than we thought. Slower because some things stayed the same for long periods. Paranthropus, with its specialized diet, persisted for over 1 million years. The simple tools of early humans remained simple for hundreds of thousands of years. Faster because when change happened, it could happen quickly. The appearance of hafted tools at Xigu around 160,000 years ago represents a technological leap. The emergence of modern human features in the Moroccan fossils at 773,000 years ago shows morphological change occurring over relatively short geological timescales. Human evolution wasn't steady and gradual. It was punctuated, with long periods of stability interrupted by bursts of change. Understanding why those bursts happen, what environmental pressures, what genetic mutations, what cultural innovations drove them, is one of the great challenges of paleoanthropology. 44th Revelation. The importance of collaboration. 44th Revelation. Behind every one of these discoveries is collaboration. The Paranthropus research involves scientists from Ethiopia, the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, and more. Dr. Fred Spoor from London analyzed the jaw using digital imaging. Professor Zeresene Alem-Seged from Chicago led the field team. Researchers from multiple institutions contributed to the study. The Moroccan research was a collaboration between Moroccan and French scientists with input from German institutions. The Xigu project involved more than 10 academic research institutes from China, Australia, Spain, and the United States. And the Neanderthal DNA study brought together geneticists from the University of Pennsylvania and other institutions. Paleoanthropology is a global science. Fossils are found in one country, analyzed in another, dated in a third, and interpreted by teams spanning the globe. This collaboration is essential. No single scientist, no single institution, no single country can do it alone. And the results speak for themselves. Each new discovery builds on previous ones, filling in the picture of our shared human story. 45th Revelation. The story continues. 45th and final revelation for this part. The story of human evolution is not finished. It never will be. Every year, new fossils are found. Every year, new techniques reveal new information about old specimens. Every year, our understanding grows and changes. The Paranthropus jaw from Ethiopia was found because someone was willing to dig in a place where Paranthropus couldn't exist. The Moroccan fossils from Thomas Quarry yielded their secrets because someone applied new dating methods and careful analysis. The Xigu tools were recognized for what they are because someone looked closely at wear patterns and reduction sequences. And the Neanderthal DNA study was possible because someone asked a new question. Not what does human DNA tell us about Neanderthals, but what does Neanderthal DNA tell us about humans? Science progresses by questioning assumptions, by looking where others haven't looked, by asking questions no one has asked before. And the story is far from complete. There are still gaps in the fossil record spanning hundreds of thousands of years. There are still regions barely explored. there are still techniques waiting to be invented that will reveal things we can't imagine. The next discovery could come tomorrow. It could come from a site that's been dug for decades, or from a completely new location. It could be a jawbone, a tooth, a finger bone, or a whole skeleton. It could confirm our theories or overturn them completely. That's the beauty of paleoanthropology. We're all detectives, piecing together a crime scene that's millions of years old, with most of the evidence missing. And every new clue changes the story. In this part, we learned that Nutcracker Man ranged far beyond where we thought, living in northern Ethiopia 2.6 million years ago alongside other heavy chewers. We learned that 773,000-year-old fossils from Morocco may be close ancestors of modern humans, bridging the gap between Homo erectus and later forms. We learned that Neanderthal-human interbreeding was biased, with Neanderthal men and human women pairing up more often than the reverse. We learned that in China, between 160,000 and 72,000 years ago, humans were making sophisticated hafted tools, challenging the idea that East Asia was technologically backward. We learned that multiple human species coexisted for hundreds of thousands of years, interacting and adapting to changing environments. And we learned that the story of human evolution is still being written, with new discoveries every year changing what we thought we knew. The Paranthropus jaw, the Moroccan fossils, the Shigu tools, the Neanderthal DNA, each one adds another piece to the puzzle. And there are so many pieces still missing. Thank you for staying with me through 4 parts of this series. If you've made it this far, you now know more about human evolution than most people on the planet. You've traveled from Ethiopia to Morocco, from Siberia to Flores, from 3 million years ago to just tens of thousands. You've met nutcrackers and hobbits, dragon man and denisovans, Neanderthals and modern humans. You've seen how they lived, loved, and died. You've seen how they mixed and mingled, creating the genetic mosaic that is you. And the story doesn't end here. There will be a part 5, because the discoveries keep coming. New fossils, new DNA, new techniques, new questions. The past is not past. It's alive in the ground, waiting to be found. Until next time, keep wondering about where we came from. Because in understanding our ancestors, we understand ourselves. Goodbye, and take care.